Greetings one and all from the Holy Land, the Holy Apple, Tapuach, the Holy Hilltop, Tal Binyamin. We are coming to you on Super Wednesdays. Back to Super Wednesdays, I see. We are on the 5th day of Tishrei, 5784. This is the first class of the new year. So if you could pour us a glass of champagne, we'll give you a hat tip. Okay, today the title of our class is Shocker! 2 exclamation points. The Sukkot holiday. Who is not invited? Question mark. Okay, this God's help. This is going to be a 2-part series. I hope, with God's help, to get them up, both of them, before Sukkot actually begins. So we'll be able to be ready. Sometimes I get complaints from people in the past more that I would put up a class, but it would be a day or two after the holiday, and the fat lady already had sung. So this one, with God's help, will go up. Both of the classes will go up before Sukkot. Okay. Our first unwanted guest in our Holy Sukkah. Drum roll, please. So, to give you a hint of who I'm talking about, I will start with the following. I think it was last year I did 2 classes on the Jerusalem parade on Sukkot. Is this the culmination of a prophecy? Is this a fulfillment of a prophecy where the remnants of nations will come up to Jerusalem, those that are left after the various holy wars against the scoffers and deniers? The links will be given underneath this class. Definitely check them out. It goes into detail on the subject about the Jerusalem March. Anyways, this is new information from 2023. I want to read you what to expect in the Holy Land. This is from the International Christian Embassy in Jerusalem, ICEJ, Director David Parsons. I quote, Sukkot also marks the ingathering of the harvest at the end of the summer season. There is also at present a great harvest of souls from every corner of the world. Very interesting language. A harvesting of souls. Yeah, they're looking for your soul. They're out there to grab and steal some Jewish souls. Beware, Jews. Wake up call. We keep Sukkot now because of that future prophetic purpose hidden in this unique festival, which will soon be revealed. And it has to do with the second coming of the Lord. Yeah, you know who they're talking about, God forbid. Throughout the Messianic age, the entire world will celebrate this feast because I believe it will mark the return of Jesus to the earth. So if you had any false thoughts that they're talking about the Lord, they're talking about Hashem, they're not talking about, when they say God, when they say the Lord, they ain't talking about Hashem Yitbarach Yud Kei Vav Kei. Unfortunately, once again, let me skip over here. For the past 35 years, thousands of Christians from all over the world have come up to Jerusalem each fall to celebrate the Feast of Tabernacles, sponsored by the International Christian Embassy in Jerusalem. They come with much expectancy to take part in a dynamic worship Yes, they're worshiping, foreign worshiping experience, knowing the one we worship will soon be sitting on his throne in this great city. Talking about JC. This year's feast will feature local and international worship leaders, taking us into refreshing times of worship to Jesus, including Joshua Aaron from Israel, Eliana Eliah from Israel, and Shiloh ben Hod from Israel. So not only do we have to contest with the regular Gentile trash that comes to harvest souls here, to steal souls, we also have to deal with these messianic, so-called messianic Jews that left Judaism to embrace Christianity. So there are also those types of garbage. The ICEJ's Feast of Tabernacles is a prophetic statement that our Lord JC is indeed coming soon. It declares to Israel and the nations that a new day is dawning. The King is coming. And here comes the King. And we are here to rejoice in his transforming power and soon arrival. King of all creations, King of the universe. Once again, not Hashem. We're talking about JC. This is so disgusting. This is all permitted by the government of Israel, by the police, by the army, by the border police, secret services who are protecting these lowlifes, soul snatchers. These people are so disgusting. Look them up. You could see them online. And they're becoming more brazen. They come on the train in Jerusalem. They come to the middle of Ben Yehudah Square. They come to the central bus station. They're all over the place. They're in your face. They're with a megaphone, yelling their foreign worship. It is so disgusting. And we love you. We love you. It's like the fishermen. We love the fish. They don't love the fish, they love themselves. And they're willing to have some bait. They have to put some bait in order to get the fish. They're willing to pay the price. Yes, they buy that bait. Not because they love the fish. The love and the smile and the embrace is the bait. And we Jews are the fish that they love. The hunters coming after the Jewish people. As we said in our last class, quoting from the Sifri, that in the eyes of the Torah, in the eyes of truth, people that take lives are less evil than people that come to steal the soul of a Jewish people. As we say in the holy language, Gadol hamachti mehahoreg. Because one that comes to make a Jew, to bring a Jew to sin, and this is not just the sin, this is one of the cardinal ones. This is one of the grand slams. To leave what our forefathers, our parents, our grandparents, great-grandparents, our relatives for thousands of years gave up their life rather than fall prey to this foreign worship, this false worship. Those that come to steal Jewish souls, to harvest Jewish souls, take away this world from those ignorant Jews and also the next world. Whereas a person that just kills somebody, God forbid, they just took away this world, but the next world they have. The love that they claim, and the smiles, and the hugging, and the embrace, and the money, can't forget that. All bait. You see guys hitting on girls. They're speaking so nicely, the smiles, presents, gifts, warm words. Why? Because they have only one intention. And you understand the 3 dots, what their intention is. So they're willing to spend the money, they're willing to say the nice words and the big smile and the love, we love you, in order to get these girls 3 dots. That's the same love we're talking about. And this is what the Torah warned us about. An amazing commentary when we look at the reuniting of Esau and Jacob, his brother, after 36 years. We first see Esau trying to bite and to kill his brother Jacob. But afterwards, we see an invitation from Esau to his brother Jacob to come along with him to where Esau resides. In the lands of Edom. And I saw an amazing commentary that these 2 tactics are the tactics of history. For the first major portion of history, they will come. The enemies of the Jewish people, the various religions, will come with the sword. But in the end of days, they will come with the second message of Esau, of join us, of love, of I'm your brother. So they are our first unwanted guests in our country, in Israel, in Jerusalem, and in our Sukkah. There's a whole long list. I'm just going to bring a few. The Shach, on his commentary on the Torah, in the portion of Emor, that's in Leviticus, brings down, do not bring a non-Jew into your sukkah for the 7-day holiday, for if you do, the holiness, the guests, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Joseph, Moses, Aaron, and David, will leave your sukkah abode. The Imre Pinchas echoes the same idea. Do not bring non-Jews into your sukkah. Shem Mishmuel, the famous Hasidic Rabbi, on his commentary on Sukkot, page 143, brings down the same exact concept. The Jewish law authority, the Kaf HaChaim, brings it down in the laws of Orach Chaim, 639, paragraph 6. This is, of course, brought down by Rabbi Chaim Falaji in his classical book, Moed L'Kol Chai, on the subject of Sukkot, and it's brought down in dozens of other Jewish sources. So, the title of the class, Who's Not Invited? These Christian missionaries and non-Jews not invited. Sukkot, the Sukkah represents a clarification between Jews and non-Jews, between good and evil, between light and darkness, between truth and falsehood. That is the holiday of Sukkot. We will get into it at length soon. But that is why, out of all of God's 613 commandments, why does he pick one out of 613? He picks the final test, which is brought down in the tractate Avodah Zarah, page 3, side 8. It is brought down that the final test, when the Gentiles will complain and kvetch, that they also, if they would have been commanded, if they would have been commanded by God to do commandments, they too would have succeeded. So God says, okay, let's try one. Out of all the 613, why does he pick the Sukkah? He could pick Shabbat. That's a difficult one. Shabbat, 24 hours, no smoking, no cigarettes, no turning on electricity. That's a difficult. Maybe I would have given that one. No, he gives a Sukkah. Why? Because that is exactly the essence of the holiday. That is what a Sukkah represents, as we will see so clear as day with the continuation of our class. But our first guest not welcome on Sukkot. Now, with that said, I'm going to put in parentheses here quickly. Of course, if a person has an elderly relative or friend that needs assistance, we're not talking about that. A person could have somebody to assist them come into a sukkah. That goes without saying. We're talking about regular situations. Okay. Moving right along, looking for our second unwanted, uninvited guest. Maybe perhaps the first one was not a shocker, but this one will be. This one will be. I'm not a betting man, Jimmy the Greek. I don't know what odds he would give me, but I bet to say that this will be a shocker. Okay, so put on those seatbelts. We don't have insurance. All these years, we still do not have insurance. So let's take it step by step. The Holy Zohar states in Leviticus, page 103, side A, based on a verse in Leviticus, chapter 23, verse 42, says the following: only the real deal Jews, can sit in the sukkah during the holiday of Sukkot. What in the world is the Zohar Kadosh talking about? Only the real deal Jews can sit. So who is that excluding? So we might come to a conclusion. Maybe we're talking about non-Jews. As we mentioned, the non-Jews are not invited into our sukkah. They'll have to stay outside of the sukkah. Obviously, there would never be a thought that a Gentile would have to observe the commandment of 7 days of sitting in a sukkah, because we know that there's the 7 go to heaven commandments of a righteous non-Jew, one of them is not the commandment of Sukkot. So when the Zohar is saying that the real deal Jews are the only ones allowed in the Sukkah, he's not talking about excluding Gentiles. That's clear. We understand that the commandments were given to the Jewish people. And one of the 7 commandments is not sitting in a Sukkah. Okay. Perhaps the Zohar is talking about that converts, Jewish converts, we're talking about kosher Jewish converts, maybe they're not allowed to sit in a sukkah, God forbid, on the holiday. Why? Maybe we might come to, bring out a thought that, because of the fact that converts were not in Egypt and they did not suffer at the hands of the Egyptians. Therefore, for all generations, any commandment connected to Passover, like the holiday of Sukkot is a continuation of the holiday of Passover. We left Egypt and then we went into these clouds of glory. So, of course, the holiday of Sukkot is connected to the holiday of Passover. And of course, we left Egypt to receive the Torah, so the holiday of Shavuot is also connected. So we might have an idea which is incorrect. Why? Because we have in Tractate Sukkot, page 28, side B, we have a lesson that it says in the verse I quoted from in Leviticus, all the citizens of Israel will sit in the Sukkah. There's an extra letter. Instead of just saying Ezrach, citizen will translate it, it says Ha-Ezrach. Why is there an extra hey? So the Talmud explains to us, teaches us, that this is to include converts, even though you might think that because they did not leave Egypt, they would be exempt from any commandments connected to Egypt and the Exodus. No. All kosher Jewish converts must keep all the commandments of the holiday of Sukkot, including sitting inside the Sukkah. So who in the world was the Zohar Kadosh talking about when he said that only real Jews can sit in the Sukkah? He's not talking about Gentiles, that they can't. He's not talking about converts because they're commanded to sit in. So, in order to understand who is this unwelcome group, let's take it from the top, as they say in Hollywood. Abraham, the first Jew, came into the land, straight into the Shomron, treading through the sand, no extra charge. Okay, Abraham, he's 99 years old, and he was just commanded to have a circumcision. It's on the 3rd day, and we are told that the 3rd day is the most painful day after the circumcision, and God brings out the desert sun, and I know that there was like 25 consecutive over 100-degree days in Phoenix this past summer, so something even worse, if you can fathom something worse than that month of summer in Phoenix, I guess that's what we would have to imagine. So God brings out this tremendous sun in order that Abraham should not have to run around in this heat trying to look for guests, because that's who Abraham was. His life was to give to others. Anyways, that didn't help, and Abraham sees some guests, three guests, and he sits them underneath the shade of the tree. That's in Genesis chapter 18. Okay. Now this might ring a bell. That's very interesting. Why does the Torah bother to tell us that Abraham sits these angels, or people he didn't know at the time, underneath the shade of the tree? Say that he took care of them, he brought them into the tent, put on the AC, put on a fan. What is this specific language of underneath the shade of the tree? In Breshit Rabbah 48:10, in the Tosefta of the Tractate of Sota, chapter 4, Law 1, both of them say the same idea. That because of this act of kindness, where Abraham took in the heat of the day, he takes these guests and he puts them underneath the shade of the tree, Abraham is rewarded that his descendants in the future will merit the holiday of Sukkot, which is sitting in a shaded abode. So we understand now that this reward began in the days of Abraham because of the fact that he put his guests in under the shade of the trees. We too, we built a sukkah, and we make sure that there is more shade than sun inside our sukkah. This tree of Abraham was able to, so to speak, scan or x-ray all of the guests that came through Abraham and Sarah's neighborhood. How is that? Every guest that came through, Abraham and Sarah would sit them underneath this special tree, and depending on the reaction of the tree, they would know how to proceed. What do I mean? They would put a traveler underneath the tree. If the leaves of the tree would escalate upwards, they knew this person was a believer in God and not a foreign worshiper. However, if a guest was put underneath this shade, this tree, and the leaves would go down, this would be a sign that these people participated and still believed in all types of foreign gods and foreign worshiping. And then, when this phenomena would happen with the leaves coming down, this Abraham would try to convince these people of the trueness of the one God. Question, of course, arises, what happened if Abraham were not always successful in convincing people? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. Some people are more convincing, some people are less. The question arises, what do our commentators say about people that Abraham placed under the tree, the leaves went down? This was a sign that they did not believe in a one God, and Abraham was not successful in convincing them of this truth. What happens? So listen to this, amazing. The Balei Tosfot commentate here that Abraham planted a tree. That it says in the verse. It says in the verse that Abraham planted a tree. The word that's used is eshel. So the Balei Tosfot explain, what does eshel stand for? Aleph, Shin Lamed. Ein Shalom Larishaim. There will be no peace for the wicked. Amazing. Which means that this tree, this X-ray machine, way before, thousands of years before the scanners, before the X-rays, was able to see, to tell what type of person was coming in to the zone of Abraham and Sarah. Those that denied God's existence were tossed out of Abraham's home. This is brought down by the Balei Tosfot, Rabbeinu Ephraim, in his commentary on the Torah, in the portion of Vayera. The Shach on the Torah, the Siftei Kohen, in the same portion of Vayera, he writes, if Abraham found out that visitors were crooks, robbers, he would not host them. He would not host them. In the book Chokhmat HaTorah on page 298, it is written there that God relayed to Abraham that he was correct in keeping these wicked people away from his property. That is amazing. Folks, let's take it back and summarize. Do we understand what is going on? We spoke about how Sukkot, the Sukkah itself, represents separation, represents investigating the situation between good and bad, evil and truth, Jews and non-Jews, darkness and light. So, we see that Abraham, when guests came to his house, he would sit them underneath this tree. Our sages tell us, because of the fact that he sat them underneath the shade of the tree, his descendants were rewarded with the holiday of Sukkot. And once again, Abraham's tree represents an X-ray, a scanning, an understanding of who we are dealing with. If we're dealing with good people, as they say in Arabic, ahlan sahlan, welcome. But if not, if we're dealing with people that are steeped in foreign worship, there is no entrance into our sukkah. So that is exactly from the beginning, from the roots of the holiday of Sukkot and Abraham, we see that the holiday of Sukkot represents a test. What side of the fence are we standing on? Where do we stand? Amazing. This holiday of Sukkot is a clarification process. Who are we? Which side do we belong to? Okay, so that's step one. That's our first introduction, Abraham, our first forefather, and the first time meeting up with the holiday of Sukkot, and this amazing shade tree that Abraham and Sarah had, which would make this clarification process, which would scan an X-ray in order to clarify everyone's spiritual situation. Okay, next step. Step B. When the Jews leave Egypt, they are joined by multitudes of converts. These non-Jews were eyewitnesses, along with, of course, the Jewish people, to the 10 miraculous plagues that God brought via Moses and Aaron upon the Egyptian people. Moses accepts these multitudes. We will get to their numbers in a minute. But Moses is approached by these Gentiles and they ask to convert. Now Moses accepts these converts without consulting God. As we will see later, God was against the acceptance of these particular converts. Why? We know that God is very open to converts. We know that there are many commandments that a Jew has to open their doors and open their arms and their hearts to the newcomers, the converts. So that seems a little bit unusual. We will get to why soon. This could be found, the acceptance of this multitudes of Gentiles can be found in two places. Shmot Rabbah, chapter 42, paragraph 10. Or in Tanchuma, in the portion of Kitisa, chapter 21. How many? This community of multitudes of Gentiles that converted, how many people are we talking about? So there are three opinions that are brought down in the Mechilta, in the portion of Bo, chapter 14. In some versions, it's chapter 12. Rabbi, according to Rabbi Ishmael, there were 1.2 million. You heard right. You don't have to take a Q-tip. They're also a little bit dangerous to put them into your ear. Not advisable. 1.2 million Gentiles converted via Moses. Rabbi Akiva doubles that, 2.4 million. Rabbi Natan, 2.6 million Gentiles converted. That is amazing. These people outnumbered the Jews that left Egypt. Think about that one. When the Jews leave Egypt, their first stop, their first resting place was a town called Sukkot. Ironically, Sukkot. And something very interesting and special happened at this depot. According to the Tosfot, on the verse of Exodus, chapter 12, verse 37, also brought down by the amazing encyclopedia, Torah Shlema, by the holy Rabbi Menachem Kasher. He brings this down on the same verse, Exodus 12, chapter 12, verse 37. So we have the Tosfot and also the Torah Shlema bring sources to this. There was a separation. The Jewish people and the converts, the multitudes, they leave Egypt together. However, as soon as they get to their first resting place, Sukkot, there is a separation between the Jewish people and the multitudes. How is that brought about? How can you separate? For God, it wasn't too difficult. There were 7 clouds of glory that surrounded and protected the Jewish people. The Jewish people who left Egypt were the only ones present within the 7 clouds of glory. The multitudes were outside the clouds of glory. So we started, the first time we meet up with the concept of Sukkah, of Sukkot, is by Abraham. And we see by Abraham also, he had this commandment, which was a clarification process, a separation between believers and those that believed, but believed in foreign worshiping. And now we see one more time, the second time, we come across a place, a location. You could look it up on your ways, called Sukkot. Once again, we have a clarification, separation between the Jewish people and the newly accepted converts by Moses, not by God, but by Moses. There is a total separation of the two groups. Amazing. Once again, remember the beginning of this class about all these thousands, maybe tens of thousands of Christians that are coming to the land of Israel, coming to Jerusalem, the holy city, during the holiday of Sukkot. Think about all these foreign worshipers with their banners of JC, as we quoted in the beginning. So, we know that the clouds of glory are connected to the holiday of Sukkot. There is an argument, a dispute between the sages. What exactly was this sukkah that the Jewish people traveled with for 40 years in the desert? Was it a physical building, structure, or was it the 7 clouds of glory? According to most opinion, of course, it was the 7 clouds of glory. So, the idea of Sukkot being a holiday that we remember the protection of the clouds of glory. This could be found in the Tractate of Sukkot, page 11, side B. So therefore, because we know, as we're taught, that the holiday of Sukkot is connected to the 7 clouds of glory, it is clear that if the Erev Rav, if the multitudes were not allowed into the clouds of glory, then they have no connection to the holiday of Sukkot. And this is brought down black and white in the Holy Zohar, in the book of Exodus, Kitisa, portion of Kitisa, page 103, side B. Writes the Zohar Kadosh, for 40 years, the Erev Rav, the multitudes, and their belongings, cattle, whatever they had, were not allowed to come into the clouds of glory. No entrance. Not only, so now we can understand what the Zohar was saying. The Zohar, by the way, a lot of the ideas here that are brought down in today's class and next week's class, a lot of them appear in a tremendous contemporary rabbi. He was the head of the yeshiva, the Talmudic school in the south of Israel, Rabbi Yaakov Horowitz. He wrote 10 or 11 amazing books, commentary on the Talmud and Jewish holidays. A lot of these ideas are brought down in his book. For 30 years, he was the Rosh Yeshiva, the head of the seminary. Okay, so now it's clear. Our first question: what in the world was the Zohar Kadosh talking about when he said only real, true Jews are allowed in the Sukkah? And we said he's not talking about Gentiles, because we would never even think about that as being an option. It's not one of their commandments. He's not talking about kosher converts, because they're also, we learn out from the Talmud that they are obligated to be inside the sukkah. So who in the world are we talking about? We're talking about the Erev Rav, the multitudes. Amazing. Even though they're converts, there's something unusual about them. There's something different. They're not our average bare converts that we are familiar with. So, why is that? That's what we're here for. Take it another step. In our stairway to heaven, you know? Where's Zeppelin when you need him? Not only were these multitudes not protected by the clouds of glory, they were not allowed in. That was only for the Jewish people. Not only that, the multitudes were considered to be a separate nation. That's amazing. Don't forget, Moses accepted them as converts. If you're a convert, you're part of the Jewish nation. No, not here. Not in this case. And don't forget the amounts. We're talking about, for every Jew, there's like 3 of them. For every Jew that left Egypt, there's 2, 3 of these multitudes. This is based on a verse in Exodus chapter 32, verse 7. God says to Moses, after the multitudes incite the Jewish people to make a golden calf, he tells Moses, go back to your nation. That's a verse. Go back to your nation. A nation? They're converts. They're part of the Jewish nation. No, no, no. Rashi, the great commentator on the Torah, writes on this verse, Moses, you accepted these converts without consulting me. This is based on Shmot Rabbah, chapter 42, paragraph 6. Okay? This was without consulting God. God was against this move. So folks, we have to call a timeout on the court here. This seems extremely bizarre. Why? Moses accepted these people as converts. Okay, I got it. He did not consult God. God was against it. Okay, but at the end of the day, the fat lady sang. They're converts. And we will present here 4 questions, 4 difficult questions. How could we understand this? How can you understand that Jewish converts cannot enter the clouds of glory, the 7 clouds of glory, and they are not able to enter the Sukkah? How is that possible? They should be obligated to observe this commandment. Question number 1 on this. Isn't there one Torah for both Jews and converts? This is based on a verse in Numbers chapter 15 verse 16. Question number 2. How can the Erev Rav be considered a separate nation? We know that there's a thumb of rule. Anytime in the Torah where it says Ha'am, the nation, it's talking about the multitudes. That's amazing. The nation. How could we consider them to be a separate nation? But we know that every time it says uses the expression Ha'am, we're talking about the multitudes. This is based on Bamidbar Rabbah, chapter 20, paragraph 23. Question number 3. It's clear that God did not want the Erev Rav to convert. This is brought down in Tanchuma in the portion of Kitisa, Exodus 21. Chapter 21. This is unusual. Folks, God did not want to accept. God, so to speak, we look at God as open hands to those of the nations that wish to convert to Judaism. And we know that the Talmud in Tractate Psachim 87, side B, it tells us that the reason the Jewish people were scattered around the world was to allow those individuals amongst the nations to join the Jewish people. So why is God putting a no entrance sign to this specific group of the Erev Rav? I don't get it. Question number 4. We are told that the Erev Rav were not participants in the giving of the Torah. Whoa! They were not participating in the giving of the Torah on Mount Sinai. This is brought down by Nachmanides, Exodus chapter 19, verse 1. How in the world did Moses accept a group of people? When I say group, and we're talking about millions, it's hard to use the word group. Masses. Okay, I like that word better. The masses. How is Moses able to accept the masses, to convert them, without the condition of accepting the Torah on Mount Sinai after we leave Egypt? How is that possible that these multitudes were not present when the Torah was given to the Jewish people? So 4 questions. Let me go over them again. Isn't there one Torah for Jews and converts? Number 2, how can we consider the Erev Rav to be a separate nation? Aren't they part of one Jewish nation? 3, how could it be that God did not want to accept this massive group? God scattered the Jewish people in order that we would be joined by individuals. 4, how could it be that Moses accepts a group that was not dependent on accepting the Torah on Mount Sinai? How did he agree to that? Those are our 4 questions. Once again, we say, take it from the top. But we're going to keep you in suspense, and God willing, next week we will continue our journey to our shocking revelation, who is not welcome on the holiday of Sukkot into our Sukkah. So don't touch that dial. We'll meet you, God willing, next week. All the best.